if you have spent any time in the book community, and I mean any time, like you could have discovered romance books last Tuesday, I am sure that you have already seen the term enemies to lovers. I mean, it's inescapable. It's on every best tropes list. It's on every book talk recommendation. It's on every thread of recommend me a book. It's everywhere. Someone always says enemies to lovers. Always. And obviously it's going to be in all of those lists, because what's not to get? They hate each other and then they don't. It's like the tension is implicitly there. So of course we're going to get hooked. But I do think that enemies to lovers is one of the most difficult and most misused and most misunderstood tropes out there. I think because the execution a lot of the times feels flat. And I think that it feels flat because people are afraid to dig deeper. So that's today's rant. I'm going to give you my favorite example, like my favorite book ever, Pride and Prejudice by Miss Jane Austen. Think about Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy represents everything that Elizabeth hates about the higher class. And Elizabeth represents, and her family represents, everything that Mr. Darcy hates about poor people. Like they have no manners and they are, I don't know, they have no manners. So the thing that they have to work through is to see beyond those stereotypes or those beliefs that they have, or those misbeliefs that they have, in order to be able to find common ground and go from there to build a relationship. Another example is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Like literally, Lucy and Joshua are fighting for the same job. It's a competition. It's one can't have the thing they want without the other losing. So that's a real structural opposition, not just like a personality clash, which is valid. But in my opinion, it makes for a weaker story. Now, let me give you my working thesis about enemies to lovers, because I think that the enemy is a mirror. In what sense? I think that the person that becomes a love interest is the person who sees the other more clearly than anyone else. They see everything underneath the performance. They see the flaws. They see everything that you want to hide from the world. They see it. And they see the person that you are hiding. And that's where the hatred comes from, because they are seeing the most guarded part of you and you hate them for it, which I think is natural. Until, of course, you fall in love. Because being seen that way by the other person can be a very vulnerable experience. It happens in real life. So when you are in that vulnerable of a position, you want to hide, you want to defend yourself, and you will sometimes want to push back. And we have characters in these stories that will push back hard because they feel this person that knows them so deeply is a threat. And I think that's where a lot of enemies to lovers falls a little bit, or feels flat a little bit, because they don't dig deeper, they don't push harder on that clash. And I think where that clash happens is where the intimacy begins, where that friction starts to give, is where the intimacy really grows. And if the conflict between these two enemies is basic, then where's the depth of feeling, you know? And this ties with what I said at the beginning about the tension, because enemies to lovers has the potential of feeling sort of romantic before anything romantic happens, because of that tension, because of that charge between the two characters, and because every scene between these two characters will have that friction, and every argument is about more than what they are saying. So every moment of conflict is also about being seen. And I think that is what makes a great enemies to lovers. Now let's talk about craft, because I think that's where enemies to lovers can feel a little flat. Because the enemies to lovers has to go through a very specific path of emotional or internal beats. The first stage is opposition. You need to establish, as an author, you need to establish why these two people can't stand each other, why they hate each other, why their existence offends the other in such a meaningful and important way that they have this deep hatred inside of them for the other person. And the why matters a lot, because if it's vague, or if it's like, I don't know, she wore shoes that I didn't like, or he wears that tie that looks stupid, or he's too tall, I don't know, whatever. If it's vague, or if it's not a strong enough reason, then are they really enemies? The second stage is recognition. It's where, and I think that this is probably where most writers rush, because the recognition is the part in the story where the characters start noticing the things about the other character that don't precisely match that checklist of enemy that they created and that they put this other person in. So maybe they helped someone without waiting for anything in return, or maybe they are decent, or maybe, you know, they help them in a moment without gloating about it, or, you know, the moments where the other character shows that, you know, this person might be more than what I think, right? So that creates cognitive dissonance, and that dissonance is what creates the tension. Third stage is the conflict between the hatred and the attraction, and this is the part that I think that authors not only rush, sometimes they like skip, they it doesn't exist in their stories. And this is the part where we see that character failing hard at keeping the attraction at bay, or maybe they just think that, okay, it's just physical, I'm just gonna, you know, get it out of my system, but I'm gonna keep hating you, and it just doesn't happen. They lose, they fall in love. But we need to see those two feelings running parallel so that we can have that delightful sensation of seeing someone lose at a battle that they are really fighting to win. Because yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of tension there. I don't know how to put it in words, but Mr. Darcy, like, how long was that man hiding his feelings for Elizabeth and trying to find all the excuses that he could to not be in love with this girl, until he just had to accept? And that's the fourth and final stage. Surrender, full surrender, when you simply, well, yeah, you know what? Fuck it. I'm in love with this other person. Despite everything that I tried to do not to be, I am in love with this person. When that happens,
I love you. Most ardently.
Yeah. Now, why I think enemies to lovers works? What specific fantasy is it feeding in the readers? I think that why it works is because it's the specific fantasy of being chosen by someone that had every reason not to choose you. Like, think about it. When someone falls in love with an enemy, it means that they looked past every grievance, every wound, every reason to walk away, and they chose to stay. It means that the love wasn't built on a fantasy. It means that the love isn't convenient or easy or, you know, based on a curated impression that they received from the other person. No, they decided to look at everything that made that person an enemy and say, you know what, that doesn't matter, because what's underneath, it's much better than any excuse that I could put on top. And by the time that these two people get together, they have seen each other, they have seen the worst of each other. And that's enormous, because they choose to stay despite knowing that. So they didn't fall in love with a fantasy, they fall in love with a real person. Like, think about what this means for this trope. When a person falls in love with an enemy, they made the conscious decision to put past them every grievance, every wound, every reason not to stay, and they choose to stay because they see this other person as what really makes them, and decide that everything that causes hurt or everything that was a reason to stay away is just not good enough to pass from the opportunity of being with them. They fall in love with the person underneath. And I think that is what makes this trope such a great one. So why does enemies to lovers fall flat on its face sometimes? Well, sometimes it's because the opposition is not believable enough, or the reason why they are enemies is not well established or deep enough to make us believe that they are really enemies. It doesn't go beyond some superficial thing. Another reason could be that the conflict stays external and it is something beyond them that forces them to play for different teams, let's say, but it's not a conflict rooted in the personalities or in their ideologies. It's not a conflict between the characters themselves. It's a conflict between factions, could be, and they try to sell it to sell it at us as enemies to lovers, but they are not truly enemies in the true sense of the word. Another reason, and I hate this one because, yeah, but another reason could be that one of the characters is a bully and the other one is a doormat, and that's not enemies to lovers. That's just a toxic relationship, in my opinion. So yeah, and another one, which is I think maybe the most common, is that the author rushes the story, or not rushes the story. Well, yeah, rushes the story, but rushes the stages or the emotional beats that the characters have to go through so that we really believe that they hated each other, and then they put everything behind them and now they are in love. So I think that those are the reasons why it can fail. If you're writing an enemies to lovers story, make sure to give your characters a real opposition, something grounded, something concrete, something that we can see on the page. Then give them enough time to fight these growing feelings and have them, try to hold on to the enmity that they have been curating for so long. Make sure that both characters have equal footing in the sense that they have both, or that they are both in a position to match and challenge each other. Not necessarily situational power, because no, I mean, depends on your story, but make sure that they are in a position where they can challenge the other. And finally, don't rush the surrender, because that's the work has to show for that surrender to feel earned. If these two people just rush through all the feelings, and then we have an enemies to lovers where, the enemies are kissing on chapter 3, and, it feels rushed, it feels cheap. And you don't want that for your story, do you? Unless you do, but I don't think that you do. So don't rush to surrender. Let us go on a journey with these characters. Let us feel the conflict inside them to hold on to the hatred that they feel. And yeah, that's it about enemies to lovers. It is probably my favorite trope. So yeah, I will leave some recommended books in the description. And if you have any other trope that you want me to talk about, or any books that you want me to read, I am always open to recommendations. Leave them in the comments, leave me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!